Everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Rob and I talk about high-end collectible comics and comics art. Subscribe if that's your kind of thing. I love to talk about comics and I post 1 or 2 videos a week doing just that. This is the third in an irregular series of videos about my favorite comic books. This one might be a little bit of a surprise to some of you if you only know me from YouTube. If you know me from the CGC forum, it might not be a surprise because I was talking about this book, searching for this book for a long time. But it is not a Golden Age book. It is not a Silver Age book. It's not even a Bronze Age book. It's a book from the 90s from Image/WildStorm. And yeah, Stormwatch 37. Let's talk about it. It's a funny one, but it was one of the books I really chased for a long time and really enjoyed owning. And you'll see the whole story is kind of funny. So, and like I said, I was going to surprise you with this series, and this is probably the first one of the surprises. But there will be more. So why do I love this book? Okay, first of all, it's just a great read. If you haven't read Stormwatch and The Authority, etc., it's like a really good run. It was 4 or 5 years. Warren Ellis working with Tom Raney and Brian Hitch, and yeah, it's great stuff. They're just simply great comics. They're fun, funny, action-packed, and intelligent. I really enjoy them. In addition to that, Stormwatch, like I said, led directly to The Authority, which was the poster child for the kind of widescreen / decompressed style of comics in the early 2000s. Many people hated that style. I loved it, and a lot of other people did as well, which is evidenced by the fact that the Ultimates, which came out right after this, was a hugely popular comic. And that is the artist of The Authority, Brian Hitch, who joined up with Mark Millar, the writer who followed Ellis on The Authority and kept up kind of what he was doing in a different way, but I mean kept up the style of The Authority. They joined together to launch The Ultimates, which The Ultimates, of course, was a huge hit by itself, but it went on to deeply influence the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A decade later, the DNA of The Ultimates is in the Avengers and the rest of the MCU. So it's wildly important in a very low-key way, and is actually just good comics. I really like it. Have I ever owned it? Okay, this is gonna buckle up. Have I ever owned it? Yes. At one point, so this is just some backstory for some of you who don't know this. At one point, I had the best WildStorm CGC graded collection in the whole world, so I definitely had one, a CGC 9.8. I also had a CGC 9.6 signature series signed by Tom Raney and 4 pages from the book by Tom Raney. That's the tip of the iceberg. As you can see in this slide, I had stacks of them at one point as well. Why? Well, this book was super tough to get. How tough? Let me tell you about it. Acquiring a CGC 9.8 copy of Stormwatch 37 was a multi-year effort involving grading 6 copies, 394s, 296s, and 198, and buying countless raw copies. I had a standing bounty, and this is why if you're on the CGC forum you might know this, I had a standing bounty of $300 for the only other 9.8, which had sold for $30 in 2002. I never got that book, so I had to source and grade a copy for my own collection. At the time, it's kind of changed, but it's still not super valuable. At the time, Stormwatch 37 was not particularly valuable to many collectors. It was niche. They just weren't graded. They weren't sold raw either. Right? They might be sold in collections, and that's where I bought them a lot, but they weren't sold by themselves. You couldn't search for Stormwatch 37 and see a bunch on eBay. And people didn't bring them to conventions because it was just, kind of 90s dreck. So the strategy for obtaining a 9.8 Stormwatch 37 involved purchasing every reasonable copy on eBay and every copy I saw at conventions. This exhaustive search eventually paid off, but it took a decade. I'm not kidding, a decade to secure a 9.8. So why, right? If you're not familiar, I'll talk about it for a little bit. The difficulty in finding a high-grade copy stems from several factors. Stormwatch 37 had a lower print run compared to earlier books in the decade, in that kind of Image decade, and then later books like The Authority #1 or Planetary #1, which I also collected. Those were ordered in higher numbers because they were #1 issues, and people have always actually, bought #1 issues and stored them, right? The Ellis Hitch Stormwatch #1, which came later, had diamond pre-orders in a $25,000 to $35,000 range. There's no indication, and there's no reason to think that number 37 would have been anywhere near that, really, because this was a number one issue and it had hype, right? That's why they relaunched it, is because Ellis had hype on this title. So in contrast, like another title I collected, Wildcats sold around 300,000 copies. And in comparison, Authority number 1 had 41,000 diamond pre-orders, and Planetary number 1 had around 37,000 diamond pre-orders. So this book was, under 20 probably. That's just diamond, but still, there weren't a lot of them. And it was just a random issue of a long-running Image title that wasn't like the marquee title by, at the time, an unknown creative team. Now, Ellis and Raney have gone on to bigger and better things, right? They've both made huge names for themselves, but it's kind of started here, right? So there was no reason for people to pick up this issue by a new unknown creative team at the time. So these just were not kept, right? A lot of them ended up in, overstock, and just, it was a mess. And it was very difficult to find nice copies. They were not bought, bagged, and stored like a number one issue would be. What's it worth? It's still not worth much. Like I said, I had a bounty of $300 for the 2002 copy up until I got my own, which at the time would have been an insane price to pay, but I spent way more than $300 to get one, so it would have been cheaper. But even now, that's actually a reasonable price to pay, $300 for this book. It was $30 in 2002. The next copy didn't sell in GPA until 2021 for $16. A copy sold in 2023 for $40. And I think what probably happened there is the Authority and Jenny Sparks got pulled into the DCU, and the book kind of blew up after that. So there's like a Tom King, Jenny Sparks series, which is actually really good. And so the book has kind of gone crazy. But it's still really volatile. So, I mean, it's as low as $178 this year and as high as $425. And like I said, there was a $40 sale in 2023, but it also is sold for up to $560. Kind of crazy. Well, it'll be interesting to see where it goes, and if Jenny Sparks especially kind of sticks in the DCU. I mean, Tom King writing her makes a difference, but we'll see. So I really like that series, but we'll see. And I'm also not reading a bunch right now, a bunch of new stuff. So like, I don't know. I actually have no idea what's going on. I'm like reading Batman, and I read that, and that's about it. Just admitting my comics reading is going down. It's because I'm making YouTube videos. I don't blame all of you. I love all you guys. I was going to blame you guys, but it's not. It's actually my fault because I like doing this. The Census. This is funny, right? 77 total copies. There are 200 Captain America Comics number ones in the Census. So this book is still not graded very much. 77 total copies, 27 9/8s, 22 9/6s, 11 9/4s, 8 9/2s, 5 9/0s, 2 8/5s, and one each in 8.0 and 7.5. So I graded 6 of those. And you can see it's still difficult. And actually, if you look at the Census for books from the 90s, you get this. This doesn't happen in the 2000s. Like in the CGC era, you have a book, it doesn't have like this spread. There's so many more 9/8s and 9/6s, and there's barely anything below that. With books from the 90s, you actually get this sort of spread where there's like a bunch of 9/4s and 9/8s and whatever, because they're harder to source, and they weren't just getting bought off the shelves and sent to CGC or bought from discount comic book services or whatever, and just sent like the box. You just send the box to CGC. So it's interesting, but it's still not graded that much. It would still be difficult to get a copy right now. You'd still be waiting a little bit. You wouldn't be waiting 10 years, but you'd be waiting a little bit. I do this with the Golden Age and Silver Age books because, it actually is a question of like what the best copy is. With a book like this, there's, a bunch of 9/8s, so they're all equal, except that this is mine. And this is the best copy. Whoever owns it has the best copy because it's the most expensive copy. It cost me probably $1,000 to get this book graded. After counting all the copies I bought, the multiple attempts at grading anything that even had a reasonable chance. So I think this is the Grail copy if you're a collector of Stormwatch 37. This book hasn't resold. I actually looked at all of the serial numbers in GPA, so it hasn't come back up for sale. So someday it will, and I will weep or cheer. I don't know, something. I'll be happy. I'm happy now, actually, that it's getting some attention, and that Jenny Sparks was written by Tom King because it was a really, really good series and great character. And that's it. This was a quick one, but I want to, I have a little bit of time right now in between auctions, so I'm kind of getting some work out on some side projects or not auction-based projects is the best way to put it, because the auctions take up a lot of time and they come fast and furious sometimes, and I just don't have time to do things like this. I'm going to do another one of these before I have to cover the Heritage Signature auction that's coming up in November, and that one will be a Bronze Age book, and I might do a Copper Age book. I might cover all the eras because it's kind of fun, and I've favorite books from every era. So you can lay your bets now which my favorite Copper Age book will be. Actually, I'm going straight to the most obvious book I've ever talked about, if you know me, for the Copper Age book. I'm just going straight there. And Bronze Age is actually going to be interesting because there's so many options. So many options. I'm going to surprise you with that one because there are obvious ones. There are obvious books that I like, but there are a few that might surprise you. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to try and get another one of these, at least one more of these out before I have to dive into auction preview review land, which is actually soon, but I have some time to work on this stuff, so I'm going to. Thank you again. Hopefully you found this interesting. Drop a comment if you think I'm weird for liking this book so much and spending basically $1,000 in 10 years hunting one down. But it's fun, actually. This is one of the things that I talk about when I talk about the joy of owning books being a huge part of the value of collecting comics, right? Like I lost money on, well, not all of it. So I collected a lot of Stormwatch stuff. I collected The Authority, Sleeper, Planetary, Wildcats, Gen 13, like a bunch of that kind of WildStorm image stuff. And some of it I made, some of the CGC graded books I made some money on because I graded them and sold them, and they sold for more than the grading costs. Other things were more difficult, like this was difficult to source, and so I definitely lost money when I sold this. But I also had a bunch of art, and so I definitely made money on the art from this. So I bought, I had all the heavy hitters except for Jim Lee. And when I sold that, I did pretty well. So I didn't lose money on this, but the joy of it was not in the money. It was in the chase. It was in owning things. It was in, for a while, having like the best CGC graded WildStorm collection, which is such a funny thing to say. But I was proud of it. And so, this is what I talk about. There's a joy in this beyond monetary value, which is funny coming from me because I talk about monetary value all the time. So thank you. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.